Welcome back. The 2024 Presidential and National Assembly elections in Namibia highlighted the critical role of accurate information in safeguarding democracy. A recent report by the Institute for Public Policy Research, the IPPR, and Namibia Fact Check sheds light on the challenges posed by disinformation, including political smear campaigns, foreign influence, and the misuse of artificial intelligence in the electoral process. Now, this report underscores the urgent need for media's accountability and robust fact-checking to counter misinformation effectively. We're now joined in studio by Mr. Frederico Links, who is the Research Associate from the IPPR. Frederico, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you so much for being here. To start with, Frederico, can you highlight some of the findings that were, picked up on?
Yes. This project we specifically conceptualized back in mid last year, when we were starting to see certain things emerge on the electoral information landscape. And specifically what we were seeing was a specific smear campaign. That's where we conceptualized it and said, look, we need to be monitoring what's happening here. Because we fully expected there to be a flood of some sort of mis and disinformation, election-related mis and disinformation, as we move closer to the elections of late November. And that's exactly, I think, what happened. Not to the extent that we expected it, but it certainly there certainly was a tide building. So what we found was that we identified that certain smear campaigns, and not just coming from one side, but smearing various candidates, some more than others, attacking their integrity, attacking their health, narratives being laundered via social media platforms and via traditional media. We saw the use of AI tools, not your more sophisticated tools, but sort of the cheap fake stuff, the free online tools to generate images and short videos. So definitely AI tools are becoming a factor we should take on seriously when it comes to the production of online content, and specifically mis and disinformation content. And something that we should concern ourselves with, because it's clear that the use of these tools and the things we were seeing were becoming more sophisticated as we move closer to the elections. But it was still fairly easy to recognize this as AI-generated content. But I mean, I think looking ahead to elections ahead of us, not just this year's elections, but further to 2029, this is something that we should really be looking at.
How can media organizations, Frederico, strengthen their fact-checking processes? I think it's a great tool, to use against mitigating mis and disinformation. So how can we strengthen our tools around that?
I think there needs to be a senior management, and this is something we've been saying for a while. There needs to be a senior management decision in creating a fact-checking desk in media organizations, and building that into the reporting, and also producing fact-checking content. Yes. Because at the moment, Namibia Fact Check is the only fact checker in Namibia. But really, we need every media organization to establish a fact-checking desk, because one desk can't do it. Yeah. And everybody needs to get it right. Because there's the aspect of media credibility and viability that has to come into focus when we talk about getting things right. Yeah. Because what we also flag in this report is, media mistakes, bad reporting, bad journalistic practices that we also saw, and this contributes to undermining not just the credibility of the news media, but also the credibility of the electoral information landscape. Yes. Because if people can't, if journalists get it wrong, if news media get it wrong, where can people turn for credible, accurate information? So, I mean, this is something that we've been flagging for a while, and we saw this with some of the narratives that were then reported. I think the single biggest one that really was disturbing was the whole current president, when she was at Oshivarongo, and this collapse narrative that emerged, and then it became part of a narrative around her being, is she healthy? Is she fit? Is, is her age maybe not an issue? So there was a narrative building in this collapse, this collapse that we still don't have any proof of, that it actually happened. This specific incident, and the media was reporting, our news media were reporting this as if it was a fact, as if it had happened.
Yes.
When we, months later, we still don't have a single visual of that actually having happened. And in this day and age of smartphones, where people have their phones out all the time, especially at events where prominent people are, and recording things, and we don't have a single visual image or picture or video clip of this collapse, and yet this was reported as if it. I mean, it was speculative reporting, which really shouldn't be what we see when it comes to significant things like elections.
Yes, correct.
And this sort of thing was front page news, and that was really sort of the standout example of the media peddling disinformation narratives, and just an all-out fabrication. So I mean, this is really something where the news media have to be very careful, not to rush to report when something isn't established, it hasn't been verified that something happened or somebody said something, or
What role does the social media play, Frederico, in perpetuating, this political abuse and smear campaigns, etc.?
Well, I mean, social media is sort of where it's happening, but not so much, the open platforms, the Facebooks, Instagrams, and so forth.
More the WhatsApps.
It's the closed groups, the encrypted groups in WhatsApps. It's the WhatsApp spaces. That's where we sort of get the sense that was where most of it was happening, where most of the propaganda, the lies, the smears were being spread, and it filtered out here and there into on open platforms. And so we sort of got a sense, but and this is a trend seen across the continent actually. A lot of, we don't have access to these spaces, so we can sort of speculate that anecdotally we have a sense that a lot of the election-related and political disinformation in general on the continent is flowing via WhatsApp groups and WhatsApp spaces. And we in our view, that's what's happening in Namibia as well, and that's what happened around these elections as well.
Foreign influence was another thing that you picked up and speak about in the report. But how can foreign influence in electoral processes be identified, number one, secondly be mitigated? Well,
I mean, that's a big question mark. There were claims out there of foreign influence. For instance, the claims around the ruling party having received a lot of support from the Chinese Communist Party, for instance, and this followed delegations sent that visited China and so on, and visited with the Chinese Communist Party. Same happened with ZANU-PF, the Zimbabwean ruling party, where there were various ruling party and senior cabinet members had visited with ahead of the elections with the ZANU-PF leadership and with the Zimbabwean head of state, and there were reciprocal delegations to Namibia, and even ZANU-PF representatives at some of the ruling party campaign events. So there was there were these incidents around which a certain narrative could be developed.
Yes.
That these foreign political parties, these foreign agents are here to assist the ruling party assist the government in rigging the elections, because that was the narrative that we were seeing spreading out there. And it kept going right up to the elections, the ZANU-PF influence and so on. And yet, at this point, we still don't have any evidence. We've not seen any evidence of this. There was the whole controversy around the ballot paper printing tender, where this Zimbabwean figure was mentioned in proximity to the printer that got the ballot paper printing tender and so on. We also wrote about this in some of our publications. So there was definitely a controversy, but so these sort of narratives, it was easy, and that's the thing with disinformation. You take a truth, an actual thing that happened, and you spin the lies around it, so that people are confused about what is actually true about this, or what is false about this. If that one element is true, then the rest must be true as well. If it's that central core thing, the Chinese, the SWAPO Secretary General was in China with the Chinese Communist Party. That was true, but now you start building a lie around that Chinese support to assist the ruling party. And
Does the report tell us, how the disinformation from the 2024 elections, contributed to public trust in Namibia's democratic institutions?
That's something. That's the actual impact of election mis and disinformation on people's voting behavior is, of course, an open question. A lot of people, most people already are sort of set in where they are politically, who they're going to vote for. And so I don't think it influences them, But there are some people who are still, making up their minds out there. That's a small minority, I think. Most people know who they're voting for. Most people know where they're going politically. So that's a hard one. Does it actually influence people's voting behavior? And this is a question that is an open question everywhere. I do think it has some impact on how people view and engage in politics, how people view and engage with others who might be of supporting opposition or so on. I think it influences those relationships and how people interact more than it actually does people's voting behavior. Because I think, as I said, people already are they know who they're going to vote for, what they're going to, what they believe and where they stand. So that's an open question for us here as well, as it is in most other places. It remains to be seen.
Frederico, just lastly, of course, we'd like to know if the report, where not only the media fraternity but the general public can have a look at it, and of course the recommendations that have been made, more importantly.
The reports will go up on the IPPR and Namibia Fact Check websites. They're not up yet. We're still sort of tweaking some of the information, but they should be up within the next week, and we will certainly promote them once they are available on the website. That's where anybody can usually get all of our publications. In terms of the recommendations, we point to this month, earlier this month, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights issued 2 resolutions, and they speak to information integrity, and states actually, and states and other non-state stakeholders really making an effort to find ways to grapple with the issue of disinformation and information integrity. And I think this is the guidance we have to follow. This is certainly something we would like to take up with relevant government entities and other stakeholders, civil society and media stakeholders. How can we in Namibia give life to these resolutions from the African Commission. Now, there are other instruments out there, such as the guidelines on the use of social media and digital tools in elections of electoral authorities in Southern Africa. So there are guidelines. And so on. So there are other instruments as well that we point to. Look, there's some guidance here that we can look at for how we can go about dealing with election-related and politics-related mis and disinformation, and just mis and disinformation in general. Yeah. But really, I mean, I think the recommendation we keep on hitting on is that we need digital media information literacy. To be rolled out in our schools and throughout the school curriculum through to tertiary levels. And there needs to be a general society-wide media information literacy campaigns that deal with the issues of how do you identify credible information, what is respectful and appropriate behavior on social media. We're seeing a lot of incidents where people are defaming and insulting and being offensive and so on. Really encouraging people to be more respectful and appropriate on social media and engaging in good faith rather than shouting at each other and always looking for fights and being aggressive and so on. So that sort of, these are the sort of, I think ultimately these are sort of interventions that will make a difference, media information literacy campaigns that are rolled out for everybody.
Frederico Links, thank you so much for your time this evening here with us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Nina.
We're going to take a very brief break. We'll be back shortly.